Okay, next up, step number 2, we're going to change the CSS with a window click. So what do we mean by that? Well, what I want to do is when I click on the window, I want to change this background to blue, okay? Just with one click. Now at the moment, we can see inside of our body, we have two elements, sky background and the image, which is the sun. Here's the CSS to place the sun image. It's absolutely positioned at the center. It's got a bit of negative percentage on the bottom, pushing it down like a sunrise. And then further up, we have sky background with a background color of black. And that's what gives us this full black color. Now, sky background is just a div. You can see it there on line 43. And it's sitting within the HTML and body, of course. The HTML and body has a height of 100%, margin, padding 0, reset, and an overflow of hidden. The reason we've done that is because if we set HTML and body to height 100%, it means that if we put a div inside of the HTML or body, like this one here, and if we give that div width and height 100%, it will stretch to the full extent of the browser so we can see a complete background color. That's how the CSS is working. But today we just want to focus on the jQuery, and specifically we want to change the CSS for this background color. Now that's really easy to do. All we do is go jQuery CSS method, okay? First thing we have is the jQuery CSS method in W3 Schools, and we also have the jQuery CSS method in the API documentation. Now we usually go to the API documentation, but just for a little change, let's have a look at the W3 Schools documentation about jQuery CSS method. By going to that page, you can see that it gives us the return value on a specified CSS property using the following syntax. And then it also shows us how to set a CSS property, which is the main reason we use this thing called CSS. CSS is a function that you can use when you install jQuery that allows you to change any CSS immediately. We're going to see how that works. At the moment, if we go down to our code section, you can see here we've plugged in our jQuery. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the $ selector. I'm going to type in document, and then I'm going to say .ready, and then I'm going to do a semicolon. Now the reason I've done this line of code first, if you were to Google this code, you will see it's the standard piece of code that you write if you want to write any jQuery. It's used for two important reasons. I'm going to type function within the parentheses, another set of parentheses, and two curly brackets. That's the complete document ready function right there. Now we use document ready because it more or less does what it says. It waits for the document, in this case the HTML document, to be ready before the code runs. So it's kind of like a safety measure so you don't have any bugs, things not being loaded before your JavaScript or jQuery begins to run. It also is like a div wrapper for our jQuery code, which is commonly used. You put code inside of other functions to protect it and to keep your code clean, kind of like a div in HTML. So those are the two reasons we use document ready when we write basic jQuery statements and functions. Okay, so when our document is ready, what we're going to do is we need to target sky background. What I'm going to do is go $ quotations, sky hyphen background. I mustn't forget to use my dot as this is a class. And then I'm going to do what we just saw on the CSS page. I'm just going to use this CSS code. I'll copy it straight over and I'll paste it in there. So I'm going to say sky background, CSS, background color, yellow. Okay? What's this doing? Well, it's targeting the sky background div and changing the CSS to background color yellow. Got there in the end. There we go. Cool. So hopefully this works. If I save this and then go back to the sunrise page, we should see when we load the page, instead of the background color being black for sky background, the page will load. Once the document is ready, the JavaScript or jQuery will come along and say, hey, sky background, you're going to become yellow. Let's see if that works. Saving. Here I go. Let's give it a reload. And it works. It's a little bit boring and the color is also terrible. What I'm going to do, I don't know if you use Google Chrome at home. I'm assuming most people do. You can download these things called extensions. If you go to More Tools, you can go to Extensions. I've got an extension called ColorZilla. It's a really cool plugin that's really good for web developers. If you click on ColorZilla, it brings up a color picker. So I can get a hex generator straight away. I'm just going to look for a nice blue. Maybe something like that. I'm going to use that hex code, go back to my code, and instead of yellow being the color we're going to use, I'm going to put in the hex code and I'll put in a hash in front of it. Okay, let's see if this works. I'll just save that down, give it a reload. There you go. We've got a nicer blue happening now. Now, there's a couple of things we need to talk about. That the jQuery method doesn't really use anything except the values. So we don't need to put a dot in or a hash. We're not using IDs or classes. We're just using a CSS property and we're using the value. Could be blue, red, green, pink, or a hex value is fine. The other thing you may have noticed is over here we have single quotations and over here we have double quotations. Now what needs to happen is you need to make a decision when you code JavaScript as to what kind of quotations you're going to use. And once you decide to use one, stick with it. Me personally, I always use single quotations. So what I'm going to do, because this code on the right was copied, is I'm just going to change it. So it has the single quotations ready. That's my coding convention. You can use either double or single, but if you choose one, stick to it to make sure that your code is clean and consistent. Okay, we're all done. Now we're going to look at something a little bit different. This is setTimeout. setTimeout's kind of cool. What it does is it's like a timer in JavaScript. And the code looks like this. You put a function inside of the parentheses, then you put a comma after the final curly bracket, space. I'm just going to put in 2000. Now we know that 2000 in time, when talking about code, means 2 seconds. What I'm going to do is just go in between the curly brackets here. I'm going to split that and we'll kind of be able to see what this does. When the document is ready, this will run. And what this function does is it waits 2 seconds before the stuff inside happens. So I'll just type that in. Waits 2 seconds before this happens. Just put that as a comment. I'm now going to get my sky background color. I'm going to cut it. And I'm just going to paste that in there like that. Now our JavaScript's really starting to get interesting. And if you've been following along and paying attention since the beginning of our course, you'll kind of see that this is almost like HTML. We've got like a wrapper document ready, then inside, instead of paragraphs and spans, we've got a setTimeout function. And we've used indentation because it's inside of this function here. You can see straight away, we've got 2 functions happening. Document ready, then when the document is ready, this code runs. This code is saying after 2 seconds, do this code. Let's see if it works. Now, when we reload the page, if it's working, we should have to wait 2 seconds before the color change. It works. If we want to do a sanity check, really make sure that this is all working, we could even put in an alert. Oh, do this one. Full stop. There we go. And let's give it another go. Cool. So that's what's known as a set timeout. It's a good, useful function to know. If you want something to happen after a period of time, you can just use this coding pattern here. I'll just cut this part out. Just this here. And what happens is, inside of this function section, it will wait 2 seconds before this code runs. There's the original that we had running before. I'm just going to comment this code out. We're going to do one more thing today, just to wrap up. Instead of waiting 2 seconds like the set timeout, what I'm going to do instead, first of all, I'm going to tidy this code and just say document ready ends. There we go. Just to let us know that this section of code is ending this section of code up here. And inside of the document ready, now I'm going to do a new bit of programming. First step, click on the sun. Second step, change the background color. You can probably see where I'm going with this. I'll just comment these steps, and you'll remember from the previous videos that when we do steps like this, you can call it pseudo code. It's a very useful technique if you just want to do some planning and say, what do I need to do and what's the next step for me to finish the tasks or activities. Okay, first up, click on the sun, $. We're going to have to select the sun image, this guy here. So if I right click inspect on the image, let's see what it tells us. Well, there's two things we can select realistically. One, we can use the class, which is very useful because we're using jQuery. But the other thing we can do, and we haven't really done yet, is we could use the element, meaning img, element meaning tag. So let's give that a go. I'm just going to type in here img, dot click. We've done this a few times. Inside the parentheses of the click function, write the word function with parentheses, curly brackets, enter, enter, and then let's just do a test. Alert. So what's happening now is we're saying when we click on the image, this alert should fire. Let's see if that works. Let's save, reload. Cool, it's working. Let's just reload and see if I can click somewhere else and if it works. Cool, that's exactly what we want. So you can see here, we now have a function that will run some code after we click on the image. What code do we want to run? You guessed it, I'm just going to use my CSS code from here. And I'm going to change sky background CSS to background color blue. Let's give that a save and reload. Now when I click on the sun, blue appears. Now this CSS can be used for virtually anything. So you can change whatever CSS you'd like. Let's put that to the test. This first line of code on 68 changes the background color. Now on the next line, which we're about to write, we're going to change the size of the sun. How would we do that? How would we change the size of the sun? Well, it's easy. We just need to select the sun. Now, before, when we selected the sun, we used the image tag. But as a demonstration, let's see if we can just use the class, which is sun-image. I'll just copy this. Paste that into here. Remember, when we're selecting elements with a class, we need the dot to tell jQuery we're using the class. And then I'm going to go CSS, quotations. Now, what do I want to change for the sun image? Let's have a look. Sun image, position absolute. Perfect. I'm going to change the width. I'm going to make it a bit fatter. I'm going to make it 400 pixels wide. So I go down here, type in width, comma, and type in 400 px. So we give it the value. Okay, now when we click on the image, the sky background will change and the sun should get bigger. Let's give it a go. Let's reload. Look at that. The alignment moved a bit, no big deal, we can change that. And the width is now, you can see here, 400 px. You can also see that the background color changed. Let's reload it. One of the good things about the inspector is you can see the JavaScript impacting and affecting the DOM or the HTML as it runs. So if you keep an eye on this line in here that's highlighted in blue, you'll see what I mean. When I click on the sun, you can see the flashing and then background color changes on the sky background and the star width 400 px changes on the sun. That's how you can use jQuery's CSS method in combination with things like click events, hover events, or even if you want to set yourself a timer, like we saw with setTimeout. It's a very powerful method that you can use in many applications and websites.